The Federals kept extending their line to the left by bringing their reinforcements into action. The Mississippians moving to their right to keep from being flanked, and the 20th Tennessee, trying to keep in touch with the Mississippians, left a gap in the left of the 20th Tennessee and Cockrell's guns in the road. And in the dense mist of the rainy morning, General Zollicoffer rode into this gap, on the right of the road up to the 4th Kentucky, whom he mistook for the 20th Tennessee, as that regiment was the only regiment between the Mississippians and Cockrell's battery, and was fired on by a portion of Fry's regiment, and he and his aide were both killed. Hi, my name is Bill Coughlin, and host of First Person Civil War podcast. While the generals of both sides get most of the recognition, the Civil War was fought by the men in the ranks, and they told their stories during and after the war. Follow me as I reveal what these men witnessed in the battles of the Civil War. Episode 52 is entitled Sergeant William J. McMurray and the 20th Tennessee at the Battle of Mill Springs, and relies on his book, History of the 20th Tennessee Regiment Volunteer Infantry, CSA, which he published in 1904. William Joseph McMurray was born on 22 September 1842 in Williamson County, Tennessee, and lived in that county until the beginning of the war with his family. Due to his upbringing, when the Civil War began, William McMurray was eager to enlist. This young soldier said that when he was a child, he often heard his father speak of the war that was soon to take place between the North and the South. So when the first bugle blast swept over the hills of Williamson County, this country boy was among the first to respond to its call. William McMurray traveled to the town of Nolensville, where men from his county formed a company of infantry in April of 1861. He enlisted as a private, and the men were organized as Company B of the 20th Tennessee, commanded by Colonel Joel A. Battle. By late 1861, Private McMurray and the 20th Tennessee were assigned to Brigadier General Felix K. Zollicoffer's brigade, and guarded the region around the Cumberland Gap, which is a pass through the Appalachian Mountains in the vicinity of Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. Guarding the Cumberland Gap would deny the pro-Union East Tennessee a connection by land to the north, and was also part of a larger defensive line devised by General Albert S. Johnston that stretched further west across Tennessee. Brigadier General Zollicoffer eventually determined that defenses were sufficient around the gap, and decided to march further east into Kentucky to link up with more Confederate forces. By December, William McMurray was a corporal, and the 20th Tennessee found themselves at Mill Springs, Kentucky, along the northern bank of the Cumberland River. That same month, Brigadier General Zollicoffer's brigade fell under the command of Major General George B. Crittenden's District of East Tennessee, who arrived in person with his 2nd Brigade to Mill Springs in early January of 1862. With the Union Army aware of the Confederates' position, Brigadier General George H. Thomas, headquartered in Lebanon, Kentucky, received orders to march his division toward Mill Springs, link up with a nearby brigade in Somerset, and push the Confederates back across the Cumberland River. After marching through the rain, Brigadier General Thomas's division arrived at Logan's Crossroads on 17 January and effected a link-up with the 12th Brigade from Somerset. As Brigadier General Thomas consolidated his command, he placed a strong guard on the road leading south down to the Confederate camp, whose pickets skirmished that night. For 2 days, Brigadier General Thomas's division remained at Logan's Crossroads, while he detailed 2 regiments to march on a suspected Confederate camp, but nothing was found. Aware of the Union presence, Major General Crittenden sent a letter on 18 January to General Johnston of his intent to attack the enemy. I am threatened by a superior force of the enemy in front, and finding it impossible to cross the river, I will have to make the fight on the ground I now occupy. The Confederates left their camp at approximately midnight on 19 January to make the 10-mile march up the Mill Springs Road toward Logan's Crossroads. In the lead was Brigadier General Zollicoffer's brigade, who threw his 2 cavalry companies out front, with the 15th Mississippi and the 20th Tennessee, with now Sergeant McMurray as the lead infantry regiments. Through the early morning hours, the rain was persistent, and at approximately 6:30 a.m., the lead elements of Brigadier General Zollicoffer's brigade found the Union pickets and opened fire. Sergeant McMurray now formed in line of battle with the 20th Tennessee. The Battle of Mill Springs had begun. At daylight, our cavalry advance came upon the enemy's pickets 2 miles from their camp. The skirmishing began, and a line of battle was formed, a cold winter's rain pouring down at the time. The enemy was not taken by surprise, and besides, they had effected a junction. Zollicoffer formed his line of battle by throwing the 15th Mississippi and the 20th Tennessee to the right of the road. The 10th Indiana was drawing up in line of battle, waiting the Confederate attack. Lieutenant Colonel William C. Keiss, commander of the 10th Indiana, received the alert from his pickets and quickly formed his regiment to meet the Confederate attack. When I got within 75 yards of the 3 companies, then hotly engaged, I formed the regiment in line of battle and rapidly disposed it for fighting. 5 companies extended through the woods on the right of the road, and the remaining companies on the left. A regiment of rebels were advancing in line of battle, and their treasonable colors were seen flaunting in the breeze. Having selected as good a position as practicable, I took a stand and ordered the regiment to fire, which order was instantly obeyed. The 10th Indiana, though initially pushed back, was eventually reinforced by 2 regiments of Kentucky cavalry on their left flank. Advancing upon the Kentuckians was Sergeant McMurray and the 20th Tennessee. The 15th Mississippi moved forward on the 10th Indiana, which was stationed in the heavy woods, and was pressing them back, when Colonel Mason ordered the 4th Kentucky Regiment under Colonel Speed S. Fry to his support. At about this juncture, Battle's regiment, the 20th Tennessee, of Zollicoffer's brigade engaged the 4th Kentucky and attempted to flank them, but was checked by Carter's brigade of East Tennesseans. When the 1st and 2nd Tennessee Union regiments opened upon the flank of the 20th Tennessee Confederate, these men were witness to one of the rarest instances of the Civil War. Men from the same state under opposing flags firing at each other. It was not the first occurrence, nor would it be the last. The 1st and 2nd Tennessee Union regiments belonged to Colonel Samuel Perry Carter's 12th Brigade, which also included the 12th Kentucky and the 1st Kentucky Cavalry. Save for the 1st Kentucky, which extended the 4th Kentucky's line, the rest of the brigade approached the battlefield from the north and linked with the Union line. But instead of facing east, they faced south. Colonel Carter's Tennesseans and Kentuckians opened with a flanking fire. Soon after these positions were taken by the Tennessee and 12th Kentucky regiments, I received from one of your aides information that the enemy was advancing through the woods and not on the road we were guarding. The brigade was immediately advanced to meet him. After reaching the woods, the 3 regiments were closed in on the enemy's right. the 1st Tennessee deployed into the field, pressing the enemy's right up the hill, firing at him and capturing some prisoners, among whom was Lieutenant Colonel Carter of the 20th Rebel Regiment of Tennessee. In this advance, the 12th Kentucky, which was on the extreme left of the line, had a brisk skirmish with a part of the enemy's forces and captured several prisoners. The 2nd East Tennessee Regiment also came up with and captured several of the enemy. Though almost evenly matched in terms of manpower, Major General Thomas was able to bring more of his regiments into line faster than the Confederates could. While Brigadier General Zollicoffer strove to extend his own line, Sergeant McMurray and the 20th Tennessee faced insurmountable odds to the north of the road. Colonel McCook, with the 9th Ohio and 2nd Minnesota, was ordered up to the support of the 10th Indiana, a section of Kenny's battery, and the 4th Kentucky, which made 8 regiments and 1 section of artillery that the 15th Mississippi and 20th Tennessee were fighting. Zollicoffer attempted to form his line on the left of the road with the 19th Tennessee and the 25th Tennessee regiments, while he placed the only artillery that he had in the road. This section of 2 guns were under the immediate command of Lieutenant Cockrell, and was the only artillery that was fired by the Confederates. Sergeant McMurray recounts it was at this critical moment, while striving to form his brigade on heavily wooded and uneven terrain, that Brigadier General Zollicoffer was killed. The Federals kept extending their line to the left by bringing their reinforcements into action. The Mississippians moving to their right to keep from being flanked, and the 20th Tennessee, trying to keep in touch with the Mississippians, left a gap between the left of the 20th Tennessee and Cockrell's guns in the road. And in the dense mist of the rainy morning, General Zollicoffer rode into this gap on the right of the road, up to the 4th Kentucky, whom he mistook for the 20th Tennessee, as that regiment was the only regiment between the Mississippians and Cockrell's battery, and was fired on by a portion of Fry's regiment, and he and his aide were both killed. Colonel Speed S. Fry's report after the battle says nothing about his regiment firing upon Brigadier General Zollicoffer, but interestingly enough, Major General Thomas's report mentions Zollicoffer's death at the hands of Colonel Fry. Colonel S. R. Fry, 4th Kentucky, was slightly wounded whilst his regiment was gallantly resisting the advance of the enemy, during which time General Zollicoffer fell from a shot from his, Colonel Fry's, pistol, which no doubt contributed materially to the discomfiture of the enemy. With the death of Brigadier General Zollicoffer, the cohesion of the 1st Brigade began to unravel. But by this time, the 2nd Brigade, under Brigadier General Carroll, was deploying along the Mill Springs Road. To the northeast, Sergeant McMurray and the 20th Tennessee were beginning to break under the concentrated Union fire. The 19th, 25th, and 29th Tennessee regiments that were on the other side of the road were being engaged, but not near so heavily as the 20th Tennessee and the 15th Mississippi. As Zollicoffer's brigade began to be forced back, Carroll's brigade was formed, but could not stem the tide of the confusion that was caused by the death of General Zollicoffer, and forcing back the 15th Mississippi and 20th Tennessee, who had bravely borne the brunt of the battle up to this time. The 20th Tennessee, being armed with flintlock muskets, not 1 in 5 would fire on the account of the incessant rain. The flintlock musket was by this time obsolete, but at this point in the war, it was still in use. While loading his musket, Sergeant McMurray had to pour gunpowder in a flash pan and load his rifle. When he pulled the trigger, a piece of flint struck the metal covering the flash pan, to which sparks ignited the gunpowder and discharged the weapon. The East Tennesseans that faced Sergeant McMurray were most likely issued with modern percussion cap rifles, which replaced the flintlock mechanism with a weapon that could fire in any type of weather. Eventually, 2 regiments marched to the support of Sergeant McMurray and the 20th Tennessee, and for a time bolstered the right flank. The 29th Tennessee, under Colonel Powell, came to the rescue of the 20th Tennessee and 15th Mississippi by pouring a galling fire into the enemy at close range. It was here that its gallant colonel was wounded. The 16th Alabama, under Colonel W.B. Wood, also rendered good service, but the battle was lost. Even with the 2nd Brigade deploying in line of battle, the Confederates eventually retreated back down the Mill Springs Road. But the battle was not yet over for Sergeant McMurray and the 20th Tennessee. A combination of circumstances was against the Confederates, namely, the loss of their principal officer at the opening of the engagement, the incessant rains that rendered 1/3 of the arms of the Confederates useless, and the superior arms of the enemy. A retreat was ordered back to Beech Grove, and it did not take much ordering. And the Federals followed up that evening, and by dark were throwing shells into our camp. Crittenden recrossed his army that night on a little steamboat named Noble Ellis, leaving his camp equipage, 12 pieces of artillery, about 1,000 horses and mules, and a number of small arms, and the worst of our wounded. The Battle of Mill Springs was one of the first significant victories for the Union, and brought the collapse of General Johnston's defensive plan for eastern Kentucky. For the time being, the initiative was in the Union's hands, which now had access to eastern Tennessee. Mill Springs also marked the decline of Major General Crittenden in the Confederate Army, whose career was effectively finished by late 1862. Though the District of East Tennessee disbanded in the wake of Mill Springs, the 20th Tennessee shifted further west and fought at Shiloh, Stones River, Chickamauga, the Atlanta Campaign, and finally, Nashville. Following the war, William J. McMurray became a doctor. Beginning in 1874, survivors of the regiment held annual reunions around 19 September, the Battle of Chickamauga. It was at one of these reunions that William McMurray was appointed to write the history of the 20th Tennessee. At the meeting in September 1900 at Antioch, it was determined that the history of this command was worthy of perpetuation, and by unanimous vote, I was appointed to write the history and was made chairman of the publication committee. With these corrections and alterations, it is most respectfully submitted to a discriminating public, with the statement that, if the author is incorrect in his views, the same is chargeable to the 65 survivors of the regiment, who rejoiced together in their hours of brilliant achievements, and who mourned in unison in those times of joint trial, tribulation, and trouble. Thank you for listening to the 52nd episode. The link to Sergeant McMurray's book is now available on the podcast website, firstpersoncivilwarpodcast.com. On Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn this week, you will find a picture of Sergeant McMurray sometime after the war. In 2 weeks' time, Father Henry Clavruel of the Diocese of Savannah provides next episode's first-person account as he tends to the prisoners at Andersonville. My name is Bill Coughlin, and thank you for listening to First Person Civil War Podcast.